Hello there guys, what is going on? Son of Chelsea back here again for another video, and I've got another brilliant guest on to talk about Chelsea. He's the host of the new Blue Bison podcast. He's written for All Things Chelsea, SW6 Daily, and has also appeared as a guest on TalkSport's Fan Forum. Matisse, how you doing, mate? Welcome to the show. Thank you for joining me.
It's great to be here, man. Really, it really is. So thank you for having me. And yeah, it's good to talk about football again.
Yeah, absolutely, man. And your Twitter account and your sort of social presence has been growing recently. I guess what sort of made you start to talk about Chelsea? Because everyone like myself sort of has sort of that inspiration to come online and talk about Chelsea and put yourself out there with your opinions. Yeah. What was it? What was the spark that inspired you to do that?
Well, I was living in Ireland for a few years now, and it was I hadn't been able to go to a game as regularly as I often could before, and you do miss those conversations after the game, or even before the game when you're in the pub and you're talking about Chelsea and you're getting all riled up for the game. And I didn't have those interactions because nobody was really, there was no one really there to speak to Chelsea about directly, apart from a few mates at school. So I was feeling a little bit detached, and I was like, I just want to get a little bit more involved in the whole fan base and everything, because I didn't really feel like I was part of the fan base too much. And then I just came onto Twitter and I seen everybody discussing it. Obviously seen football Twitter and all the banter that goes with it as well. And I already made videos before Twitter on YouTube for like old channels before as well. And then I had my old podcast, so I was like, this would be a decent space to get into. So I just started testing a few things out, and then lo and behold, it worked out well enough.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it's such a, when I think back to when I started my channel, there was such a lack of, there was a social media was still big, but it wasn't the same as it is now. And also the amount of, in terms of video, in terms of actually creators around Chelsea on YouTube, it was literally non-existent. It was literally me, Eunice, and this other guy Joe Zacco, who I'm going to get on the and I guess you could call this a podcast on my channel soon to talk about Chelsea. And yeah, it was so small. So now when you're coming up, there's so much more around, and there's so many more people to connect with now, as sort of online, for its positives and negatives, has continued to grow and continue to see more voices. And I think you're one of the positive ones. So of course, talking about the weekend and Chelsea, and what a surprise it was on Saturday. Literally, I think we all got it so wrong in terms of the team selection. And you posted your sort of post-match thoughts after the win, and you spoke about Klopp's first season at Liverpool. And this is something I've referred to in the past, of Chelsea potentially being that this season. Can you explain what you mean by that in relation to Frank Lampard's Chelsea?
Well, obviously they have similar ideology of Frank trying to press really high. The football is extremely high intensity, which we've seen so far, and I think that's why the likes of Mason Mount is probably misunderstood so far this season. What he brings to the team in his pressing, in his energy, getting in the half spaces, he's not your typical winger that everybody's used to. Your out and out winger. But what he does for the team is so crucial, and it's one of the reasons why I'm currently writing an article, and it will be out today, on the fact that Mason Mount and Loftus-Cheek, I think, will be in the same team very often this season, because I think Mason Mount's average position was actually higher than Tammy's in the game against Wolves. So his position is not what everybody thought it was when he was at Derby. It's definitely changed, and just the way the team presses, it's very, very high intensity. And then you also have the leaking of the goals at the back. I do think that's because we don't have a leader. I spoke about it before in another podcast, is that we have currently we have a lot of secondary centre backs, and until Rudiger steps up as that leader when he comes back fully fit, hopefully he does, he'll become that leader that we need. But if you look at Liverpool now, when they look to improve that, they had Van Dijk come in, who's a leader, and then suddenly those secondary centre backs like Lovren or Gomez or Matip, they look a lot better next to Van Dijk. I think obviously we've been shipping a lot of goals. Obviously the fullbacks have been a concern, but to see Frank so flexible, I think he's probably even more flexible than Klopp was in that first season. So I think he's used 3 or 4 formations so far already. We've seen it in pre-season as well. So yeah, there are similarities, but there's a couple of differences that actually might hopefully make him better than the 8th place finish that Liverpool had as well in the first season.
Definitely, I think the added benefit compared to Klopp is Lampard's had a full pre-season. With his team that Klopp just didn't have. But there is that similarity as well with Klopp, that Klopp couldn't buy any players. He literally stepped into Brendan Rodgers, who I think had some poor transfer windows with that squad. And I think the biggest comparison is when you look at that team he set out in his first game to his most recent lineup. The evolution of that team is really impressive, and I think it's a positive comparison, and it's one that everyone is like. I'm sure Man United fans are hoping to make the same with Solskjaer at the moment. But I think you make good salient points there about the style of football we're playing, which does appear to be at its core about high pressing, about fast movement. More if you to said before about sort of Pep Guardiola and Jose being inspirations, but I think very much to me it looks more like in the style of Klopp, which is exciting. Something you touched on there about Mount's sort of movement and being up as almost a second striker. It's been something that's been so key, I think, for us in terms of we've missed a goal-scoring midfielder for so long, and I think Ruben at the back end of last season was such a revelation. At least, I always thought he should have been in the team and could offer that, but he was so impressive at the back end of last season. How do you see this team lining up? You said about Ruben and Mount being in the same team. When Frank finally has a full deck, which he hasn't had already, how do you see this team lining up? It could be 3, it could be 4 at the back. We're not quite sure, but how would you see, especially in attack, how would you line up personally?
Well, obviously we've got Tammy Abraham, who's doing absolutely wonders. I mean, as someone who I didn't write him off, but I definitely 100% doubted him. But I doubted all of our strikers. I kind of just said at the start of the season, whoever picks up form first can start. I didn't expect it to be Tammy because Batshuayi was looking okay in pre-season, so it was kind of 50 on all of them. But Tammy has blown me away with his. It's not really even the finishing, because in the box he can finish, but it's the way he's scoring the goals. They're all different types of goals, and the headers and the scrappy ones are not surprising, but the ones where he's taking the ball from quite deep and bringing it forward, and really taking on defenders and getting past them and all of that's really impressing me. And he's had some really good finishes, so he definitely stays up front and he's looking like the man this season. And then I'd say HUDSON-ODOI comes in. He looks really good in their development squad game. He looks back to full fitness. Obviously, it's worrying because we've had this situation before where players come back and then we rush them in and they get injured. So I'm hoping he doesn't start against Valencia. As much as I want to see him, I really do want him slowly brought in. It was something that was really done well last year. Was Loftus-Cheek was managed in slowly after his injury. So I think once he's fully fit, he'll come back into the team. Pulisic is looking, he's looking a little bit ropey. He's had some good games. He's had some quiet games. I think he's going to take some time. He's 20 years old. We have to remember that. I know the fee is a lot, but I think a lot of people forget that he's actually only 20. He's actually younger than Abraham. So he definitely needs to be given some time. So I see him maybe on the bench in a rotation. I definitely see Mount starting. I think right now, I posted yesterday, Mount's looking like a second striker for me. I think his dad even said that as well, and Declan Rice and many others have said that. So he's evolving. I think right now he's looking like that Dele Alli, Paul Scholes in his younger days, very far forward, scoring a lot of goals. And then as his career progresses, a lot of his doubters with the lack of creativity or the lack of passing range or composure, that will come as experience comes learning the game. And he might move back into that back three and he might become a dictator of the midfield and whatnot. But right now, his qualities are perfect for a second striker. His link up with Abraham is really good. They have a strong connection from the youth games. And he just brings so much energy. You've seen against Wolves, he was getting back, making clearances. And people don't really, they take that for granted far too much because we've complained year after year. The team lacks heart, it lacks desire, it lacks work rate. They drop off. Mount never drops off. If he's having a poor game, he still runs back, he still makes clearances. And that's just as important as what he's doing at the other end. Because if he doesn't make those clearances, we concede chances and then maybe goals go in. So I definitely keep him in the team right now. And then Loftus-Cheek comes into that midfield. I think you'll go over 3, maybe Jorginho at the base and Kante when he's fully fit as well. I think that's our strongest midfield. I think, most people kind of agree on that. And I think Loftus-Cheek, when he comes back, again, it's that youth connection. I think we're going to have a front 4 all from Cobham. It's going to be quite incredible, and then Kante sits alongside Jorginho, worked so many times last season with the double pivot when we're defending, and Loftus-Cheek kind of breaks forward. I think it's very exciting, and then you have Reece James coming back in there as well, and Emerson. It's the starting 11 is quite something, especially after Tammy's form as well.
I think there's that brilliant sense of unpredictability about this season that many other seasons haven't had, and I think that something there's as you've pointed out, there's a lot that we take for granted, and also I think we easily already forget that Frank, just like the inexperienced players he's putting out on the pitch, he's an inexperienced manager as well who's evolving. And I said this in my review on Saturday, that he's not wedded to one formation. He's not played like the same formation, and he's nailed it down. He's been in management for 10, 15, 20 years, and he knows what he wants. He very much is learning on the job as well, which absolutely is a risk and is something that is going to bring its downsides, and is going to bring moments like when he brings on Billy Gilmore with 2-1 with 5 minutes to go. But I think as well it's going to give fans who were frustrated with Sarri last season a chance to see a manager who is going to approach different situations in different manners, and I think that's really exciting. And I think three at the back, a 4-3-3, a 4-2-3-1, some sort of form of a diamond. I think the amount of options Frank has this season is really exciting for fans, and especially with the core of it being young players, it's just a dream come true. I guess, of course, at the moment it's all about Tammy, it's all about Mason, Fikayo Tomori, it's all about the young players, which absolutely for me has to be at the base of this team. And of course with the transfer ban has helped that. But when we move past the transfer ban and we're able to sign players again, I just want to talk to you about recruitment, because it's something I would love to see, that Chelsea now change the profile of signings into a younger player, into a player that very much fits into what we're trying to do under Frank, or the manager at that time, when at times in previous years it feels like there's no link there at all. We're buying players that don't fit into the system. What would you, because of course we had some transfer wish lists coming up last week. What do you think about this? Do you think the recruitment policy will change? Can it change? How would you change it going forward?
Well, I think, the club have been, it's clear, they've been working really hard to establish a connection. The likes of Petr Cech coming in, they've allowed Jody Morris to join Edwards. So I'm really happy with all of that, because there's going to be a connection. There's no doubt there's going to be a connection between the manager and the board. It's impossible that there can't be, especially when they've worked under each other for so long. I think we even seen before Lampard came in, the profile of player did kind of change a little bit. They did start to think about what they were doing in the transfer market. I think we've seen in January with them blocking that Paredes move to come in and back up Jorginho to keep Ampadu in the mix. Whether they made the right decision or not in terms of depth, because Jorginho did burn out a little bit and that position is very specialist, it was still good to see that they thought of Ampadu. So there's definitely a younger profile player that they're looking at now. Just from the players that we've been linked with, Chilwell, Dembele at Lyon, these are all younger, hungry players, and that's what you need. If we're gonna go out and we're gonna press teams, we need energy, right? And that's why I've been so strong, over that international break on when we do sign players, they need to be quality depth, because there's no point signing your Papigila Bodgies, from wherever. There's literally no point. You have young players that can do far better than that. So if you're going to bring players in, it should be 4 or 5. Don't buy loads, and make sure that they're the top dollar, because they're just going to push the youngsters better. And if you're in training every week and you're surrounded by world class, I can only imagine what Eden Hazard could have done for this team this year. Just a world class player surrounded by these youngsters. They're only going to pick up so much stuff. And it's important that we have the base now, we have the foundation of the young players. We need to surround them with world-class players as well and get the blend right so they can learn stuff, from those players in training and pick up stuff on the pitch. That's the key, recipe to success, is you have an experienced person or just someone in their prime, and then you stick a youngster alongside them and the cycle continues. So I've got a few targets. It's one of the reasons why I haven't, and I probably butchered the name, but I haven't pushed away signing a centre midfielder. There's been quite a few linked with us, the one from Lyon, one from Leverkusen. I haven't pushed them away because I do see Mount as further forward. So I don't see, those players competing for his position. And obviously Loftus-Cheek's got a lot of injury issues as well. So I still feel like we need someone in that LCM spot who's quite creative and can break a team apart, a Bernardo Silva type of player, Kevin De Bruyne, that kind of player. So yeah, it's going to be an interesting window. I think one thing we can guarantee is we're not going to get aging players. We're not going to get players on the decline. We've had so many previous years where we signed like a Falcao or Pato or even Higuain was really, he's not in his prime, right? So we're not going to have any of that. So that's something to look forward to. And I think anybody who does extremely well this season, you're looking at Tammy, you're looking at Mount, Tomori. Obviously, they stay next season. They can't be now backup players. They need to be involved as well, competing for spots. And then anybody who doesn't impress, we're looking at the three strikers. For me, Tammy's, looking like the guy. So the other two, you get rid. Anybody who can't get, because this is a free season, in my opinion. This is the perfect opportunity for anybody to step up. So the players that don't step up, that's clear indication for me that they're not good enough, and you get them out in the next summer, and you revamp the squad with players that are good enough.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that some of that recruitment is going to be down to you're hoping by the time we get to March, April, Frank maybe has nailed down his best formation, best team, or close to that. Of course, that's the perfect scenario. And then I think that will, in some ways, link into who we're going to sign, because if it is a free at the back, we need to start looking at wing back depth and who's going to play there, and of course free at the back you need more centre backs, and bringing back Ethan Ampadu who could play in one of those positions. I think some of that obviously, and if we're going to start playing with inverted wingers, you're sort of looking at the profile of a player that could fit into that. So of course it all depends on how the season goes, but I think what the big positive that you mentioned there with Petr Cech coming back in is there now feels to me to be more of a link, hopefully, and a more connection with the manager, actually, because managers previously at Chelsea have complained about this, that I'm just given the players I'm given and I have to deal with it, and I have a say in transfers, but I can be overruled, which I do think you need at clubs. You don't want it one extreme like the Wenger scenario where he's basically running the club and all facets of it, because then you can get into real problems, especially if that manager then decides to leave. But you do need a say. You do need. I think we need to mould the vision of the manager we've got currently, like Klopp, perfect example, Pochettino, and of course Pep. And the thing you mentioned there about aging players, I think it is so important now that we're signing players who are coming into their prime rather than in their prime and are about to be at the peak of the mountain, basically. That helped when we had better players in the squad and we were going for Premier League titles, and that worked under Jose. But I think the way the Premier League works now and the way football has evolved now is you look at the top teams and they are recruiting younger players who are coming into their prime. Raheem Sterling at the moment, for me, is on form, probably, in my opinion, probably the best player in the league at the moment. And you look how young he still is and how far he still has to go. I think that's what Chelsea need to look at as the mould.
And another point on that, just to extend, we have such a young manager, right? So to sign experienced players is even more risky, in my opinion. You see the situation with David Luiz over the summer. That's what authority and an aging player who's got the history of the trophies, who's got all of the experience behind him. He's not far off Frank's age. You know what I mean? It's not a big enough age gap, I feel, for him to really stamp his authority and be. Obviously, he did in the end by selling him. That's just because, thank God, he's got a big character. But if you're really gonna get players to do what you want, and there needs to be an age gap as well. I think there definitely needs to be some sort of seniority. So, and it's a very young coaching staff line. Jody Morris is not very old. It's a very young team compared to what we're used to. And also what you mentioned with the three at the back, I think the Conte years where we played three at the back in the youth teams, and we had wing backs as well there in the youth team, De Silva, Reece James, you name them, they're going to be very used to being adaptable as well. They've been part of this change of management and this change of formation. Every time we change formation in the senior team, the youth team tends to mirror it somewhat as well, so they can get to the first team, right? So those players are already used to having to learn loads of systems, and they should be fairly adaptable. So whatever formation we go with, I think we've got enough young players to suit that 100%.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think Frank, we're going to see him. I'm going to do recording this on Monday morning, so I'm going to do my team selector for Valencia after his press conference, and I'm like, I want to say three at the back because we've just had an amazing victory, but like he could easily switch to a 4-3-3 or a 4-2-3-1 once again, and there is, someone who wanted to see Sarri succeed last year and would like to see us stick to at least one formation and really get good at doing that formation and become masters of it. But I think, as we've already expressed, there is going to be that evolution this year, and everyone's got a chance, and Frank's going to try different things, and that's exciting. Whilst he has the backing of fans and hopefully the club as well. Of course, as I've just mentioned there, the Valencia game, our Champions League campaign starts. It's very exciting to have Europe's elite back at the Bridge, and Valencia have had, they've had it's quite a traumatic, if that's quite a bit of hyperbole there, but they've lost their manager, if I've got that correct.
I think they did.
Well, there's definitely problems there, and of course lost to Barcelona at a week 4-1, but anyone can lose to Barcelona. I guess just your feelings on the group, the way it's shaped up. How do you think Chelsea's youngsters are going to learn from this? How do you think we can do? Do you think we can win the group? Do you think it's going to be more tricky than a lot of people are predicting? Just your opinions on Valencia and also the group.
Well, when to start with the group, when I seen the group come out, I was happy, of course, because it could have been a lot worse. I mean, pot 2 was pot 1 basically. The way that they've got the new rules and the way that it all lines up is pot 2 is it's peak. It's really bad. And to be fair, like, usually in the Champions League, there's actually quite a few big teams missing. It just works out that way that some teams have a mare in their own league, but there's a lot. Most of them are in there this year, so it could have really been a much tougher group. What I like about the group is that it's still challenging, 100% still challenging. That's a really challenging group. I feel like we are the best team if we play to our best and everybody plays to their best. I think we are the best team in that group, but one lapse of concentration, which we know Frank won't let happen because he's made it so clear that the players need to be 100% in it. They need to be 100% focused. But any lapse of concentration, and all of those teams can capitalise. They've all got danger men. They've all got good players. So it's a good group. It's a group that we can top. I think we will top, just because I think that European feeling of not being in it from last year, I think that will actually, it will bring a buzz about the place. Stamford Bridge, I'm going on Tuesday. I think the atmosphere is going to be amazing to start with. So I'm really looking forward to that. I just think the whole place, especially at the Bridge, is going to be a fortress in the Champions League. I think when we used to be in it every single year, maybe take it for granted. Now that we're not, and it's not so much of a given with the Premier League how it is these days, I think people are really going to get up for the game and be that 12th man, so to speak. So I think we'll get through the group. It's a very good group. On Valencia, they've got some dangerous players. They have some dangerous players. And I know they're going through turmoil, but that can also sometimes drive a team on. That can also sometimes push a team to prove themselves. Everybody's, thinking it's the same really that happened with us, although we had to wait 2 weeks. When Chelsea drew to Sheffield United, it wasn't turmoil, but the fans were starting to question what the hell's going on. How are we drawing at home to, one of the worst teams in the league? With all due respect, but they're probably going to be in the relegation battle. So how are we drawing 2-2 at home to them from 2-0 up? So we was in our own little turmoil, I guess. Look what it did, and that's with a break. So Valencia have the opportunity to respond immediately. They've seen our defence, and as strong as our attack is, defence is key. We look at our title wins in recent years under Conte, under Mourinho. Defence is huge. It's the base. That's why we have to get that right. We have to sort that out really quickly. So I think Valencia are going to target that. They're going to look at it. Of course, it really does matter who's fit. I'm hoping Rudiger is going to be fit. Although, again, like I said earlier, I don't really want to risk players back because long-term, bigger picture, it would be nice to just have everybody fit instead of picking up these little niggling injuries like N'Golo Kante's picked up recently. So it does depend on who's fit somewhat, but even if Rudiger's not fit, Tomori and Christensen, you'd hope that they can establish a connection as well. So I'm confident for the game, just because every single time I've been to a Chelsea game, I've actually never seen us lose live. So
good luck, John.
I'm hoping that can continue. This is the first Champions League game for me as well, so I'm buzzing. I'm hoping we can secure it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'll be at the Bridge as well, and it's really exciting to have the Champions League back. And I think a bit like the Prem, a bit like everything this season, there is that sense of just unpredictability about, and also that sense that with this team, with the backing of the fans, I think my hope is after Saturday, after the real feel-good feeling around Chelsea at the moment, there is going to be, because there is that still going to be that sense this season that we're up against it at times. My hope is the reaction to that will be the fans make better atmospheres and don't turn up to the Bridge assuming we're going to win, because a lot of the time this season, especially in these type of games where it's tight, and Valencia have got good experience in the Champions League, the same as Ajax, the same as Lille, we need to be behind the team. We need to get behind young players who, for them it's their first. For some of them it's their first time playing in the Champions League. For some of them it's their first time being first team players in a Champions League team. So it's important we get behind them. And I do agree with you. I think we can do well in this group, and I think there are going to be some really exciting games. I'm really excited for the Ajax game. I think that's going to be a really interesting game because everyone's going to. If you don't look that closely at Ajax, everyone will go, "Oh, De Ligt, De Jong, they've left, so they're not the same team." But when you actually look at it, there is an amazing squad there, and a team that has been built behind. Ajax are such a great model. I think that Chelsea should look at for inspiration. In terms of the youth setup,
it would also be silly to rule them out. We've seen last season how far they got. And it wasn't based on individuals. That's a team. That's a team game they're playing. Everything from the positional play, from the movement off the ball runs, the muscle memory that they have to know where each other are going to be and just lay it off to each other. That's a team. That's a factory line that's just clicking and just going. And you just take out a few cogs, you can just put in a few others. So I think they'll be slightly weaker because obviously those are world class talents, but certainly not to underestimate 100%.
Just another small thing, because of course the Champions League squad got announced, and we did see the likes of Gilmour make the squad. Do you think Frank will give minutes to these players, I guess you could call them more as the fringe academy players, because he's made it pretty clear that the path is there to get into his squad, the path is there to get minutes under him. Do you think? Of course, I think some of this also depends on how we do in the Champions League. If every game's a real close tie, and we're literally the last game, I think against Lille at home, where we have to win to go through. But do you think these players that haven't featured already, have only got limited minutes, do you think they'll feature under Frank in the Champions League?
Yeah, I mean, under previous managers, you would have said absolutely not. You could have missed 10 Kevin De Bruyne's from our academy and you would not have known, because there's just no way they're getting into the team. But I think we've seen from Frank bringing on Billy against Sheffield United, which it's a decision that I didn't agree with. I was very excited to see at the time, and then as the game unfolded, I was like, that probably wasn't the best substitution to make, just because you can bring on a defender or whatnot. But the character that it takes to bring him on, the faith that he has in him, that's promising. Long term, short term wise, it could have been detrimental, but long term wise, the faith that he has to bring him on in the first place is impressive. And we all know how much everybody rates Billy Gilmour. So I think, it does depend how the group pans, because obviously this is a knockout situation now. It's not the league. So each group game is huge. There's a certain points tally we need to reach to get through. Everybody knows it's kind of the magical 10 points. If you don't get that, you're struggling. So I think it does, it depends how much if we start strong and we get maybe a group game at the end, or even, you just need a point or something like that, just less pressure, then I can definitely see them playing. There's a lot of players in the development squad that are looking good as well. And I think in the Champions League, you can use, I think, youth players, they don't count as the registration. So it's a possibility. I'm really looking forward to that, and I'm really looking forward to the Carabao Cup game as well, because that's up against Grimsby, and that's a perfect opportunity to see some youngsters as well. So, and obviously get some returning players back from injury. So I think that's also been kind to us that we can do that. I think out of all the managers we've had so far, he is the perfect guy to spot a player coming through the ranks. Any talent that's coming through, anybody that's gonna knock on the door, surprise us. He's going to spot them. You're not going to miss them this time. So we shouldn't have any regrets in 5-10 years time in terms of who's coming through this current crop. I'm just really excited. Every time he speaks in these press conferences, that's why I'm looking forward to it later. He always does the club justice. There's never any controversy. There's never any drama. It's always professional. He's saying the right things. He's very good at it. And you could tell from last season at Derby. So I'm really looking forward to the connection between the youth team and the senior squad. And it's not even just about the youth players getting in, because, They may not be good enough. They may not get in. But the message that sends out to the senior players is that if you don't run that extra yard, I will play an 18-year-old over you. I don't care. And I think that's always been an issue in the past, is we've had this complacency of senior squads not quite playing well. They're not quite up to it. They're not quite running that extra yard. They're not putting that effort. But we know the manager's not going to play a younger player over them because he's scared that they're not ready or this, that, and the third. So that's not there anymore. And he's even said, which was amazing, after a Tammy hat-trick, he's there speaking about, Tammy, you need to be on it. You need to stay consistent. Keep focused, because if you're not focused in the next game, I'm taking you off. And that's exactly what we need. Everything he said publicly so far, from players needing to actually see Chelsea as the destination and all of this, it's perfect for the club. He may not have the same pulling power that more experienced managers like Sarri or Pep had, but he's going to have pulling power in the fact that he's making us a big club again by just speaking as if we're a big club. He's not coming here to say we're in a free season, it's going to take time. He's coming here saying, listen, doesn't matter what the circumstances, we're here to try and win again. We're here to, in every competition, we're going for it. And if you want to be at this club, you need to be at this club. And that's the kind of loyalty you're seeing at players that are at Manchester City who don't have anywhere near as history as us. But you're not seeing players like Aguero leave. You're not, because they've made themselves into a club that are seen to be, the pinnacle. And that's what we need to get back to. So I'm delighted with the way Frank is speaking at the moment. It's brilliant.
Yeah, always press conferences and post-match interviews are like must-watch at the moment. None of them you want to skip. You want to take in everything he's saying. And there is that real sense of unity that just wasn't there last year. And I think you touch on the more experienced players being challenged. I think just that was my problem with Sarri last year, was that players like Alonso and Willian, you felt at times, especially Alonso, for a long period of the season, for whatever reason, you just felt if a player knows his place is almost guaranteed, even if the manager won't publicly say that, if he knows his level of performance is dropping each week, but he keeps on getting picked, he's like, well, if a 5 out of 10 is going to get me my start, I'm not trying to question someone's professionalism here, but it's like you do get into that sphere where it's like you need that competition. So if players need to know at a club like Chelsea, your place is not guaranteed. That doesn't mean that you won't get a chance. It's just if you work hard enough, you're going to get that chance. But when you get that chance, you've got to take it with both arms. And I think that's really a positive this year. Did you want to say something about that?
I'll definitely question it. Do you know what? I know you won't, but I'll definitely question it. And it's not even just, one or two. It's all of them. I think in any form of work, if you don't have any competition from your boss, you will drop off. I've done it myself. I'm pretty sure everybody has. If you're feeling at work that you've got the safety nets and you're not on your toes and you're not being given any tasks that challenge you, or you're not having any competition of you need to step up here, or, I will replace you in terms of you will be demoted or something like that, you will slack off. It's human nature. We're not dealing with robots here. They won't just keep up that consistent performance. And I remember distinctly, as soon as Emerson came into the team, and we had a backlog of fixtures, I think it was a cup game, a Europa League, a league, everything was backed up. It was like maybe 3 or 4 games in the space of, just over, about 15 days or something, or 2 weeks. We had to rotate. There was no other choice. And I remember as soon as Emerson came back out of the team, and he was first choice at this point, I think Alonso came in against Tottenham and put in a blinder. Alonso at home to Tottenham, I think also Caballero played that game as well, as when Kepa had his incident at Man City. So it was directly after that game. And Alonso comes in and he's playing left back, where it's a position I don't think he can play at all. But he comes in at left back and he has an absolute stormer. And that's because of the competition Emerson's given him. He's on the bench, he's sitting there, and he's thinking, how am I going to get back into this team? What do I need to do? And that's the kind of competition we need. If we don't have that, then anybody can slack off. I think even Hazard can slack off at times. So, yeah, I mean, it's perfect. We need that. It's 100% needed in any team. It's something Pep is really good at Man City. He keeps everybody on their toes. He's got so many world-class players there, and despite that, he doesn't seem to have too many issue about players complaining that they're not playing, or because he seems to have made it very clear there's a standard. And if you're not up to that standard, don't even expect to get into my team.
Yeah, definitely, and hopefully that's something Frank continues to instill at Chelsea, which I think is going to be a real benefit. And hopefully we won't see the winter sort of slump we've seen in recent years, and we see that sort of urgency in the team as the months go on, which is definitely going to be exciting. But thank you, mate, for coming on. Thank you for talking about Chelsea with me. A really interesting discussion there. Before we do wrap up, just to give you a chance to plug yourself about where people can find you and your work online. Just don't want to get any of it wrong. So just give you the floor now to give yourself a shout out, basically.
Thanks, man. Yeah, guys, you can catch me on Twitter. That's where everything kind of is. At Matisse Armani or MAH on Twitter. You search me there, you should be able to find. I'm writing articles at the moment for all things Chelsea. Great team there, and obviously SW6 Daily as well. Very talented team. Lots of video creators, editors. So it's kind of like a very creative. It's some of the best creators that are not really very well known on the Chelsea platform, and they've all kind of come together and they're just putting out their own individual pieces of work. And it's good. So if you want to see next up and coming maybe Chelsea creators, your next Tiggs, there's people like there like Hale. Special shout out to him. Made a fantastic video the other day on the Chelsea Champions League campaign upcoming that everybody loves. So there's some really good work going on there. And obviously I'm starting the Blue Bison podcast as well with Simon Phillips and then Tom as well. So that's going to kick off soon, and I'm looking forward to that. And I'm hoping even to do some fan cams and some more guest appearances like this. I'm going to the game Tuesday, so I could even be doing a fan cam there, which will be interesting. Hopefully I'm not too reactionary. So yeah, catch me on all that stuff, and thanks for having me. Thanks for having me, man.
No worries, man. Thank you for coming on, and definitely support everything Maura's just said there. Go and check all of that out. The links will be in the description box below for his Twitter and any other places you can find him as well. So definitely go and check that out and support fellow Chelsea creators. So thank you guys so much for taking the time to watch this video. If you did enjoy it, make sure to hit that subscribe button and also the notification bell to never miss an upload. Thank you guys for watching. Follow me on Twitter @SonOfChelsea, and I'll see you again.